Do you want to ice your cake like a pro, but you don't have all the tools to do it and you don't even know how? Well, I'm here to show you. Let's go. So the first thing you need is obviously your cake and your icing. Today I'm using my keto-friendly carrot cake recipe, and I'm also using 2 servings of my keto-friendly cream cheese icing. The first tool that I like to use that I think is very necessary is a cake turntable. Now, if you don't have a turntable, you can take the turntable out of the microwave, place it on your countertop, and use that. It's not as stable, so I do recommend using the cake turntable, but it is definitely a really good alternative if you're in a pinch and you don't have one. Next, you will need a spatula. So I'm using one that's specifically for cake decorating, but if you don't have that, you can use any spatula that has a nice flat bottom on it. You will need a scraper of some kind. So today I'm using a dough cutter because I like how it has a nice handle, and I just like how it really smooths the icing onto the cake. But you can use a cake scraper, or if you don't have any of those things, you can use a spatula. The icing just probably won't be as smooth. It might be a little bit wavy, but you can make it work. The last thing I love to use is a piping bag and a closed star piping tip. So if you don't have any of those, don't worry about it because you can take a large Ziploc bag and just use that. I'll show you how to do that later on. The first thing we need to do is take a little dollop of icing and place that on top of our cake plate. And then you're going to take your first layer of cake with the flattest side facing up and place it on top of that. So this will just help keep the cake stable. Taking a large clump of icing, add it to the middle of your cake layer and make sure it gets all the way to the edge of your cake. Now, if your cake is a little bit uneven, you can add a little bit more icing to the side that it kind of dips down on more, just to help level it out a little bit. Now, if it's a very uneven cake, don't do this because you don't want this much icing on one side and like that much icing on another. You want it to be as smooth and as even as possible. Now grab your other cake layer and add that to the top of your cake. If your top layer of the cake is kind of domed, you can take a serrated knife and just kind of cut the top off a little bit to help make it a little bit more even. But if it's not too bad, don't worry about it. Taking a large clump of icing, go ahead and add that to the top of your cake and start smearing it all over the cake and onto the sides as well. So this is going to be our crumb coat, which is really important to have because it glues all of those crumbs back onto the cake, and it just helps create a really nice base for the main frosting to go onto. It helps it look so much smoother. While you're doing your crumb coat, you can also add a little extra frosting into those gaps that is in the middle of your cake just to help fill it in a bit more. Now it's time to make the sides nice and smooth. So you're going to grab your scraper, put it up to the cake, and then slowly turn the turntable so it creates a nice smooth side. This will also get rid of any excess icing that you might have on the cake. But you don't want to press too hard because if you press too hard, it'll just rip it all off and that won't be really good. Now you're going to do the exact same thing with the top of the cake, but instead of scraping the side, you're going to scrape the top. Now, if on the side you see little bits of icing kind of hanging off, you can kind of scrape the sides just very slightly to get rid of those. Or you can even kind of get rid of it with your finger if you're a little scared to use a scraper. Now that our crumb coat is done, we're going to apply our main coat of icing. So you're going to take a glob of icing and just add it to the side of your cake and then scrape kind of as you go. I'm going to be covering my cake with nuts on the side, so it doesn't bother me at all if there's a little bit of cake showing through. But if this does bother you and you're not using nuts, you can just apply a little bit more icing on those parts that are really coming through. Now slap another large glob of icing on top, and you're going to smooth that out with your spatula. So make sure you get all the way to the edges as well. It's okay if it comes off of the edge a little bit, because you can, remember, like I said before, scrape it off with the scraper or try and use your finger to make it as smooth of an edge as possible. Using the scraper will make a sharper edge though. As you're scraping your cake, it really helps if you take that excess icing that is on your scraper and scrape it onto the edge of your icing bowl each time you do a scrape. Because if you just kind of keep scraping, it will just leave really random clumps of icing all over your cake. So you just want to have a fresh scraper every time you do a new scrape. How many times can I say scrape in a sentence? Before we start decorating our cake, it would help if you take a wet cloth and just kind of clean up the sides of that plate a little bit. I have icing all over mine and it will get really sticky and the nuts will stick to it. It won't look good. So clean it up now while you can. Our icing is done, our plate is clean. Now it's time to take those crushed pecans and press them onto the side of our cake. Now it's time to prepare our piping bag. So grab a large cup, add your piping bag into the middle of it, and then you're going to fold over the sides of the piping bag over the sides of the cup. Now using a spatula, add the remaining icing into your piping bag. Now take your piping bag out of the cup, squeeze the piping bag so there's no air in it, and then twist the top. Now I always like to do a little practice rosette on the side before I actually start them on my cake, just to make sure there's no little air pockets hidden in there. If you're using a Ziploc bag instead of a piping bag and piping tip, then you can add globs of icing onto the tops of your cake instead of rosettes, and then take your pecan and add it to the top of the glob just to make it look a little bit nicer. Once you have your rosettes down, it's time to evenly place them around your cake. For a little extra touch, I like to sprinkle a little cinnamon on the top of the rosettes. To finish it off, you can like this video and subscribe to my channel. Just kidding, but not really. Anyway, you can take your pecans and add those to the tops of your rosettes, and then it will just finish it off really nicely. And there you have it, a beautifully decorated cake that didn't require all of those fancy cake tools. However, if you do want to step up your cake decorating a little bit, you can go on Amazon and they do have cake decorating kits that are like $30. That's where I got mine. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and please remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you want to see videos just like this one. Anyway, I hope you have a great day. See you later.